from Hollywood, I'm Martin Grove, welcoming you to our Screendollars podcast, Boxoffice Autopsy. Right now, we'll look at the movie marketplace and analyze how things are going and where they're going, sharing some opinions from my perspective after decades of talking about Hollywood on CNN Entertainment Tonight and as a Hollywood Reporter columnist. Gray winter skies turn sunny at box offices everywhere as The Batman opened to $128.5 million domestic at 4,417 theaters, the second biggest launch of the pandemic era, after Spider-Man No Way Home with $260.1 million last December 17th. Hollywood handicappers expected the Warner Bros. DC tentpole starring Robert Pattinson to do between $100 and $150 million. It might have come closer to that higher mark if it didn't run nearly 3 hours, losing a show daily. Exhibitors tried to make up for that by running it on more screens, but there's no way to add extra IMAX screens, and those are the ones that bring in the biggest bucks. Aside from running long, The Batman hit all the right notes. Here's director Matt Reeves explaining his approach to making the reboot.
I think what was important to me was I knew that as a baseline, you had to give people, Batman is a character that people love, and he's been around for over 80 years, and they're great movies. So I knew there had to be, you couldn't make a Batmobile movie, you couldn't make a Batman movie without making a movie that had a great Batmobile chase. It had to have all the spectacle, it had to have all the things that you're going to expect, and we do all of that. But I also felt like it was really important that the movie justify a new iteration, that it needed to be distinctive and stand on its own as a new special thing. And I thought we'd never really seen The World's Greatest Detective as the subject of the movie, like out of The Long Halloween by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, this idea of telling a kind of serial killer story and Batman trying to unravel the mystery in a way that had such detail that you'd never seen before, that was kind of almost like a thriller and a horror movie and all of those things together. And I thought that could be really fresh and different. And so that was really why.
The Batman, which reportedly cost $200 million to make, lucked out domestically in terms of timing. It hit theaters as Omicron's fading and pandemic restrictions across the U.S. are being relaxed or dropped. It also helps that 1, it's not day and dating on HBO Max, and 2, it's 85% fresh with critics on Rotten Tomatoes with a 90% audience score. That means great word of mouth. Internationally, The Batman got off to a rousing start with $120 million, not including Russia, where Warner's canceled its opening after Russia invaded Ukraine. It's also not in China now, but should be keeping theaters there very busy when it opens March 18th. For now, its global cume is $248.5 million, with $22.3 million of that from IMAX. The Batman also got a domestic boost from AMC Entertainment's premium pricing of tickets to the tentpole. AMC CEO Adam Aron said this follows the circuit's move several years ago to hike pricing at some U.S. theaters for high-demand weekend showings versus lower-demand midweek shows. Media reports put AMC's new increase at $1 to $1.50 per adult admission, depending on the market. Meanwhile, crime fighter that he is, the Batman's helping stamp out day and dating. Adult moviegoers are returning to theaters as pandemic scare headlines disappear. The research company NRG reported this week that 80% of moviegoers are now very or somewhat comfortable with being in a theater. That's also good news for Madison Avenue, which likes having access to a large, captive audience of consumers sitting in the dark, waiting for a movie to begin. What the Batman's supersized success hammers home is that people want to see movies on the big screen with other people, not at home on flat screens with distractions like phones, kids, dogs, and doorbells. Hollywood actually extended its pandemic pain by embracing Wall Street's passion for day and dating. 2021's most successful studio was Sony, which happily didn't have its own streaming service to get in the way. Sony Marvel tentpoles like Venom, Let There Be Carnage, with $502 million, and Spider-Man No Way Home, with $1.9 billion, helped exhibitors worldwide survive. Misguided management moves put all of Warner Brothers' 2021 movies on HBO Max day and date, but smarter strategizing now has given Warner Brothers titles exclusive 45-day theatrical windows. Exhibition's all the better for that, and so is WB. With The Caped Crusader dominating the box office, Sony and PlayStation's action-adventure Uncharted fell to second place with $11 million, down 52% in weekend 3. It's done $100.3 million domestic, plus $171.3 million internationally, for a worldwide cum of $271.6 million. It lands in China March 14th. The only other film on this weekend's chart worth talking about is Sony Marvel's Spider-Man No Way Home, which in its 12th weekend placed fourth with $4.4 million. That brings its domestic cum to $786.5 million. It's now the third biggest grossing domestic film ever. The next one to beat, which seems unlikely, is Avengers Endgame with $858.4 million. Looking ahead, the next big moneymaker on Hollywood's horizon is Sony Marvel's action-adventure Morbius, opening April 1st. Here's Jared Leto, who plays the vampirism-infected Dr. Morbius, with some insights about the movie.
Morbius is a Marvel character who's been an important part of the universe. He's brilliant.
That cure is finally possible.
He's strong. He's got some unique powers, but his powers seem to be out of his control.
What's happening?
I love the opportunity to do something transformational.
I've become something different.
It was a very intense physical role. Morbius at his most frail and then most monstrous. This superhero, supervillain, putting a new Marvel character on screen that had never been on screen before. It'll be fun to see where we could go with that. There's a web of opportunity.
Morbius is tracking great 4 weeks out, with its highest definite interest scores from under 25 females, 20 points over norm. Its next best demo is over 25 males, who are 17 points over norm. Morbius will be arriving with perfect timing 1 month after The Batman. Time now for our Oscar Outlook Spotlight, starting with the latest on how Academy members are bombarding the organization with objections to its new plans for presenting 8 awards during a taped hour before the live show airs March 27th, during which they'll be seen as edited highlights. At Saturday night's Editors Guild festivities, the 72nd Annual Ace Eddie Awards, host Chris Rock said in his opening monologue, quote, "They're cutting the show to be shorter this year. One of the categories that they're cutting is the Editing Award." After a pause while the editors booed loudly, Rock asked, "Who are they going to get to cut that?" Well, it's really all about ratings. The buzz is the now vilified Academy leaders had no choice but to promise ABC the 3-hour max show it wants. Last year's telecast had only 10.4 million average viewers, down 56% versus 23.6 million in 2020. 2021's show was 19 minutes over the now mandated 3 hours. The small overage matters because when Oscar reveals its Best Picture after 11 p.m. Eastern, it loses viewers, especially those who haven't seen the contenders and don't care who wins. They'd rather go to sleep, call it a night. When average viewership is compiled, that soft fourth hour hurts the first 3 hours. ABC got about $2 million per 30-second ad last year. Madison Avenue won't pay that price for a show with poor ratings. Last year's show aired mid-pandemic, which didn't help, with Best Picture going to Nomadland. There was no A-list host to draw viewers, as Ellen DeGeneres did so well in 2014 when 12 Years a Slave won with 43.7 million viewers. What really helped in 2014 was having strong nominees like Captain Phillips with Tom Hanks, Gravity with George Clooney, and The Wolf of Wall Street with Leonardo DiCaprio. Those were films people actually saw and hoped would win. Most of this year's noms, however worthy critics say they are, just haven't been seen by enough people to augur well for decent ratings. It remains to be seen if the Academy will back off from its controversial plan, but nominees will be campaigning until the bitter end, which is 5 p.m. Pacific Time, March 22nd, when voting stops. Both lead acting races are very competitive. Jessica Chastain got a major boost from her SAG lead actress win for The EYES of Tammy Faye, which hadn't done well at the box office or with critics and hadn't made Chastain a likely winner. However, SAG and Oscar have matched up for lead actress 19 times in the last 27 years. Here's Jessica Chastain talking about why this was a project she wanted to do.
Well, the documentary, they really introduced me to the incredible woman that she was, filled with compassion and love, and I was a bit shocked that I didn't really know the real Tammy, except for the drama and the media, sensationalizing the story. And I thought, it began my journey of getting to know her and my journey of trying to get this film made and introduce her to a new generation of people. You know what? I think it's because I love her so much. I really love what she stood for. I think in any day and age, we need it. This idea that she could take cruelty and transfer it to love. She understood that if someone was being cruel, it was because they had pain inside and they felt unacknowledged and unseen. And so she would always cross the line. We're living in a time right now where there's a lot of things slinged back and forth, and we're always upping the insults and upping the hurt, and you did this to me, so now I'm going to do this to you. And she really was the example of turning the other cheek and saying, you know what? I'm going to give you love because I understand that you have pain, and I want to know where that pain comes from. And it's something I think we can all learn from.
Chastain's the front runner now, but she's facing big competition from Academy favorites Olivia Colman for The Lost Daughter and Nicole Kidman for Being the Ricardos. In the lead actor race, Will Smith's the front runner after his SAG victory. Here, too, the competition's fierce, especially from Benedict Cumberbatch for The Power of the Dog and Denzel Washington for The Tragedy of Macbeth. Here's a scene that shows why Will Smith could go all the way Oscar night.
Do you want to turn pro?
Yes.
A lot of people are excited to see how you do against players like Celis. Do you think you can beat her?
I know I could beat her.
You know you can beat her. Very confident.
I'm very confident.
You say it so easily. Why?
Because I believe it.
But you haven't played a match in almost 3 years.
All right, hold it right there, if you don't mind. Let me tell you why.
Richard, we're doing an interview.
What she had said, she said it with so much confidence the first time, but you keep going on and on.
But you can't just keep interrupting.
But what you got to understand is you're dealing with the image of a 14-year-old child. And this child gonna be playing when your old ass and me gonna be in the grave. When she had said something, we done told you what's happening. You are dealing with a little black kid. Let her be a kid. Now she done answered it with a lot of confidence. Leave that alone.
SAG and Oscar have matched up for lead actor 21 times in the last 27 years, so putting your money on Will Smith probably isn't a high-risk bet. Of course, surprises are always possible, and we always keep an eye out for them. Please join us again next week here on Box Office Autopsy when we'll look at the Batman's second weekend ticket sales, and we'll have the latest on what Academy members are saying about those controversial awards-giving changes. Until then, thanks very much for listening. Time now for our film flashback look at what was happening in Hollywood right around now, way back then. Let's set today's time travel dial for March 12th, 2012. After the Twilight Saga franchise's spectacular success, Lionsgate reached even greater heights with The Hunger Games, whose first episode premiered March 12th, 2012. Hunger followed in the giant footsteps of Twilight's 5 episodes, which did $3.3 billion worldwide from 2008 through 10. But moviegoers' global appetite for Hunger's 4 episodes generated $4.2 billion from 2012 through 15. Both series were based on best-selling young adult fiction. Stephenie Meyer's 4 fantasy vampire Twilight novels, and Suzanne Collins' 3 dystopian Hunger Tales. Like other Hollywood mega-hits, Hunger had variables that could have spelled disaster had they been handled differently. Without director Gary Ross, Hunger's first episode could have been its last. Ross was one of 3 directors being considered in 2010. The other 2 seemed more likely choices at the time. David Slade had perfect credentials, having directed the 2010 hit The Twilight Saga Eclipse. Sam Mendes made his feature directing debut in 1999 with American Beauty, which won 5 Oscars, including Best Picture and Directing. Ross was best known then for 2 smaller films, Pleasantville, a 1998 teen fantasy with Reese Witherspoon and Tobey Maguire, and Seabiscuit, a 2003 sports drama with Tobey Maguire and Elizabeth Banks. Casting Jennifer Lawrence as Katniss Everdeen was another key decision without which Hunger might never have worked as well. Other young actresses reportedly then under consideration included Emma Roberts, Chloe Grace Moretz, Haley Steinfeld, Abigail Breslin, Saoirse Ronan, Brie Larson, and Shailene Woodley. When Lawrence was offered the role, she didn't say yes, worrying she might be too old at 22 and too blonde to play 16-year-old brunette Katniss. Lawrence signed on only after Suzanne Collins insisted she was perfect casting. Lawrence went on to star in 3 more episodes, but Ross didn't direct them. In comments on the film's DVD, he explained, "We were under tremendous financial pressure for this movie. It's under $80 million, and it's a really, really big movie. Other blockbusters cost twice or 3 times as much." Between the money stress and a high-pressure production schedule, Ross had suffered enough hunger. That was a lucky day for Francis Lawrence, director of the 2007 sci-fi drama I Am Legend. Lawrence was brought in to make the next three hungers: 2013's Catching Fire, 2014's Mockingjay Part 1, and 2015's Mockingjay Part 2. And that's it for today's podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll be back with another Box Office Autopsy next week. In Hollywood for Screendollars, I'm Martin Grove.